How we doing, everybody, and welcome to Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. I'm your host, Trage, today joined by Austin and Rogan. First off, Rogan, how we doing on this Friday? A little snowy out there, a little blistery. How we doing today in the great state of Wisconsin?
I'm doing good, Trage. Bucks a nice big win tonight, and hopefully we don't get too much snow tomorrow.
There you go. Austin, how we doing on this Friday?
We're doing good. Like you said, a little snowy outside. My car is struggling to run out there, but hey, we're making it around town. We're shoveling snow, helping out the community. You know, being a good man today on this nice. Thank God it's Friday.
Austin woke up, he looked out the window, saw the snow, went back to bed. He was done with it. He's like, I don't care.
Covers were
I'm going to watch the parents go out there and shovel the snow. I'm going to go back to bed. So with that, we got the weekend preview coming up today. We got a lot of sports coming up this weekend. The big one, the Packers taking on the Cowboys here coming up this weekend. Also, the Badgers in action, men's basketball. They're going to be in action versus Northwestern. We're going to get into that game. Women's team also in action along with Marquette's women's team. And then like Rogan was saying there, the Bucks with a massive win. What we needed to see out of the Bucks there against the Celtics last night. We're going to look at that game a little bit here. It's got some Brewers in the news, so we're going to jump into the Brewers a little bit here, talking about some of the deals that they've been closing in on. So right away, I'm going to jump into the Bucks. 135-102 was the finish last night. The Bucks controlled this game from the opening tip. The thing that stood out was the defense. That was what was massive in this ball game. Looking at the totals, 41 points in that first quarter for the Bucks compared to 23 from Boston. They only gave up 15 points in that second quarter to Boston. And I mean, the rest of this game, we didn't really see many of the starters for Boston. They kind of raised the white flag early in this one. The Bucks, we're up by 30, up by more than that at points in this ball game. So Austin, what did we see for stats in this one that stood out to you?
Yeah, for the Bucks, it was a big night from Bobby Portis. He dropped 28 points off the bench in this one, also adding 12 rebounds. So double-double from Bobby Portis off the bench is huge. Cameron Payne coming back from injury, I believe, and he also had added 7 off the bench. But as of the starters, Giannis, he had 24 with 12 rebounds. Damian Lillard also added 21. Michael Beasley added 16. And Lopez had 15. So pretty good game from Lopez. Middleton, only 5 points there out of 20 minutes. Little not as many minutes as we've seen, but also, like you said, we kind of got a pretty big lead there. So a lot of our starters didn't have to play 30-plus minutes. We were able to get a lot of younger guys in, like AJ Green, even Thanasis, Antetokounmpo, and Livingston. They all had 9 minutes there for them, and they all scored. Everyone except for Beauchamp and Jackson Jr. off of our bench scored. So I think that's really good that a lot of those younger guys were able to get some minutes.
The biggest thing I saw in this ball game for the Bucks was the spread apart scoring that they had in this one. Looking at Giannis, 24 points. We've been used to the last few games here, Giannis putting up 40 and everybody else kind of just waiting in the wings with 10, with 11. In this one, 24 for Giannis, and like you said, 28 for Portis. Just the well-rounded scoring that the Bucks showed in this one. Even like Brook Lopez getting involved in this game, 15 points. I thought that was massive to see Brook getting involved like he did. The three-point line definitely was the big thing in this ball game. 18 made threes by this Bucks team. And then looking at the rebounding battle, 53 rebounds for the Bucks in this one compared to 32 for the Celtics. Out-rebounded, all around, the Bucks outplayed the Celtics in this one from start to finish. Rogan, what did you see that you liked from the Bucks in this one?
Like you said, Trage, they really came out tonight on defense and did a really good job. And we do got to mention Boston is coming off a game last night, so maybe some tired legs out there. But I was really pleased with how Malik Beasley and Chris Middleton played defense tonight. They were pretty tough on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think combined, Brown and Tatum only scored 17 points, so that's really good. And I was also impressed with Andre Jackson Jr. coming off the bench. He played some good minutes. Like Austin said, he didn't score, but his defense on those outside wings was really good tonight. And I was also happy with how Damian Lillard started the game. I noticed sometimes he kind of starts off and he's looking to get other guys going, but right away in this game, Damian Lillard was super aggressive and got his shot going, so they're going to need that out of him going forward in the season.
The thing that I am not impressed with when I look at this Bucks team is still on that bench. Bobby had 28. That was impressive to see out of Bobby. But you look at the rest of this bench, and I mean, Pat Connaughton, a big member of that bench for the Bucks, 2 points in this one. 2 points in 21 minutes of action. You got to have a little bit more scoring there behind Bobby on the bench. Right now, to me, we have one reliable guy on the bench we can go to for scoring, and that is Bobby Portis. You look at the rest of these guys here, and I mean, Cameron Payne, 7 points. I don't expect much more out of Cameron Payne. I haven't all season long here. And then, like you guys were, Thanasis was the net with 6 points there. So, the bench scoring, you look at who scored and what in this one, but I'm looking at Pat Connaughton, and it kind of concerns me because he's one of the main members off that bench when, a lot of these guys, like you guys were talking, they're played because it was a blowout. Thanasis and Green getting in there as much as he did, Livingston, all those guys in there because it was a blowout. Seeing Connaughton out there and only mustering up 2 points once again, I know he's reliable on the defensive end at times, and he plays he gets into other aspects of the game, does Connaughton, but 2 points. You can't have that out of your number 2 option on the bench there if you are the Bucks.
Yeah, and you said he's reliable at some times, but tonight when I was watching Connaughton, he had 3 fouls, and it seemed like he wasn't doing that well on the defensive end either, especially against all of the Celtics second teamers. Like Rogan was saying, Boston played a game last night, so a lot of probably sore legs, and they were down by so much. So a lot of those second teamers for Boston got almost all the playing time. And that's when, after the second half, Boston, they still were bad, but they went on a little bit of a run. They were scoring a lot more than what they did in the first half. So those second teamers were doing a lot better. Pat Connaughton, though, it seemed like when he was out there, it seemed like he was either fouling or, I don't know, the defense just wasn't there from someone who should come off the bench and kind of have that defensive presence that we kind of want from him. And it's kind of like what you were saying. He has the defense sometimes, but other times it's kind of like, if you're only going to score 2 points, you better be really, really good at defense. Otherwise, you're almost useless.
The thing with it is that you look at the only thing that really looks good for his stats, but it looks phenomenal for all of the Bucks in this one, was the plus 20 that he had when he's in that ball game. They were up by 20 points at least when he's in there, so the plus minus differential there. That's the only thing that looks good to me in the stat book for Pat Connaughton in this one. And if you looked at a lot of the Bucks games this season, a majority of them, that's about all that looks good in his regimen right now. Nothing else really flowing for Connaughton, especially for a guy. We have to rely on him. His game is a couple 3-pointers here and there, possibly getting to the basket for you at times. I haven't seen that out of Pat Connaughton this year, and that's what worries me, especially we're getting closer and closer to the halfway mark in the season, and we haven't seen that progression getting into that scoring bit. Rogan, what do you got for me?
Yeah, you were talking about Connaughton having that plus 20, but I just want to point out, I don't know how that's computed, because Bobby Portis dominated this basketball game, and he only had a plus minus of 15. So that just goes to show you, I don't really think that's a great stat. And like you were saying, that's the only thing Connaughton has going for him tonight. So not good from him at all.
Sometimes they just make up stats because they can. That's what I've noticed. You look at a lot of baseball stats, and you look at WAR, wins above replacement, stuff like that. That stat was made up to make guys look a little bit better than what they are. How many stats I've seen a bunch of stats that get made up to make Mike Trout look like he's actually something. And this is going to get me a lot of heat. Mike Trout's a pretty good player, but there's a lot of stats that are made up, especially in the game of baseball, that look to make guys better. And I'm looking at now the plus-minus statistic is a measure of point differential when players are in and out of the game. It is calculated by taking the difference in the score when the player enters the game and subtracting it from the player exits the game. So Connaughton probably getting in there when the Bucks were up by, say, 30 or 35 points, and then being pulled out, and Bobby Portis's minutes being kind of in the in-between moments in there could have measured into that. It's definitely not a good stat if you're looking at it as that's what we're going to hold a guy to in the plus-minus there. So definitely something to look at there. The Bucks, anybody else got anything else there for the Bucks?
I don't think so. But Trey, it's a good thing you stopped yourself before saying what you were going to say about Mike Trout, because Mike Trout's pretty good at baseball there.
Hey, I never said he wasn't good at baseball. I say they make up a lot of stats to make guys look like they're better at baseball.
But let me tell you,
That's
Sal
what I'm saying.
Frelick on the come up to be better than Trout, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Mike Trout would be a lot better if he could actually play in a complete season and he would get out of Anaheim and get away from the Angels. Then there'd be a little bit more. No, then there would be no love for Mike Trout. There'd be a little bit more love for Mike Trout if he grew a brain and not a heart and said, "See you later, Angels. I'm going to go find a team that can win a championship." Because Shohei Ohtani dipped out of there as fast as he could and headed for the Dodgers. So I can't like Shohei Ohtani anymore. So Mike Trout needs to get out of there too. Maybe Mike Trout comes to Milwaukee. I don't know. We can do a 1-for-1 trade. We'll send them Christian Yelich. We'll take Mike Trout. We'll roll the World Series with Trout. That's all I'm saying. I love
the whole team.
Sure, we can give him the team. I mean, the contracts aren't very high. No, contracts aren't very high. And with that, we're going to get into the contracts here. The Brewers are in the news. We have, arbitrations coming up. It actually went through yesterday. So all the deals had to be made yesterday before going to possible hearings and everything like that for arbitration. So looking at the Brewers, they had Bryce Wilson, Yoel Pampas, Jake Bauers, Devin Williams, Willie Adames, and Corbin Burns all up for arbitration yesterday. And the Brewers actually struck deals with Adames, Bauers, and Wilson. They were reported earlier yesterday. Adames settled with a $12.25 million contract with the Brewers. Bryce Wilson signed for $1 million, and Bauer's contract is $1.35 million. Those are all projected in those retrospect. Looking at also, Corbin Burns settled on his deal, $15.6375 million. That's just some weird numbers in there. Just give me $17 million and call it good enough. We don't have to go just over 16.5. But so Burns actually made over what he was projected to make. They project him at 15.1. The Brewers gave him 15.6. So maybe trying to make amends to what they did to Corbin Burns last year. The only ones that did not report agreements were Devin Williams and Yoel Pampas from what we saw. So those two guys, it looks like Williams and the Brewers are going to go to a hearing. So just like they had with Burns last year, they're going to go to the courtroom. They're going to argue about why he should make this much, why he shouldn't make this much. Hopefully the Brewers don't tick off Devin Williams like they ticked off Corbin Burns last year. But with the Brewers and the deals that they made yesterday, I mean, not a lot. They didn't have to spend a lot keeping these 6 guys around. They stayed relatively low on the money line there. I think when it's all said and done, it was in the $30 million range, somewhere in there for all the deals that they made up yesterday. So when I look at this Brewers roster now, you're bringing back Willie Adames for a year. Bryce Terang still relatively, I'm assuming, will be the second baseman for the Brewers leading into this upcoming season. I am assuming Monasterio for third base. That's where it seems like we have him projected at. First base is still the question mark for me with this Brewers team. Carlos Santana currently still a free agent. We brought Jake Bauers in a trade. We also have, who was the other guy I believe the Brewers still had in there? I don't think they have anybody else. Nobody else should be on the roster there at first base right now. So I'm just looking at the Brewers at first base and thinking we still need to add somewhere. And I think first base is definitely a good option to add if you are the Brewers. Possibly third base. I think the outfield, you can't add in the outfield. The outfield's got so many guys out there we don't know what to do with. We got Joey Wiemer, Garrett Mitchell, Sal Frelick, Christian Yelich, Jackson Churro, definitely going to get a shot out there this season, making the money that he is now. He's going to be up in the majors in no time. So, and William Contreras behind the plate again, coming back next year. So this Brewers team, though they aren't adding big pieces, definitely with the youth is locked and loaded and ready. The only thing that concerns me is the pitching staff. Losing Brandon Woodruff, you have Burns back now, but who knows what we're going to get with Corbin Burns going into this next season. And Freddie Peralta coming back. besides those two, you got Wade Miley. Adrian Hauser is now gone, so you don't have that reliable arm in there. You're going to have to bring pieces in, add pieces, potentially looking at rookies. So it's definitely going to be interesting looking at what they're doing. Were you guys, any of you guys, surprised by the Brewers bringing back Willy Adames? Like, bringing back Willy Adames, knowing that Bryce Terang defensively could play shortstop, and offensively, Willy Adames has been down the past couple years. I was kind of surprised the Brewers didn't try and at least move Willy Adames here in the offseason. So, are you guys surprised, or were you guys kind of like, this is what I expected out of the Brewers bringing Willy Adames back?
This is something I kind of expected. I didn't really know all this was kind of going on. I don't really when it's the off season for the Brewers, I don't really pay attention to all the contracts and stuff, because all that stuff, I mean, there's just so many players and stuff happens. But I'm kind of not surprised that they re-signed Adames. I mean, he's been with the team for a while now. He had a down year, but for the parts that he was with the Brewers, I mean, he's been a vet. At this point, you can probably call him a vet. And now that we have a coaching change, probably having Adames in that clubhouse might be a little bit better than not having him there at all. So I think that's a little bit of a factor too. And also, we're not paying him a whole lot either. So I think that is helpful also.
Yeah,
I think
I wasn't really surprised. Like you said, he kind of had a bad year last year, but I think overall for the Brewers, he's been pretty solid. And our infield right now is really lacking guys that can hit the ball like out of the park. Like our team in general, we don't have a lot of home run hitters. And like last year, he had 24 homers, so not a crazy amount, but for our team, that was a pretty high total. So I wasn't really surprised by it. I was surprised, like, he did get a pay raise coming off a year where he really struggled. So I was surprised by that, but him coming back, I wasn't, no.
I think the biggest thing looking at, like you said, the down power numbers for the Brewers, they're definitely missing a power threat at third base, and they're missing a power threat at the first base position. Last year, Rowdy Tellez, terrible season for Rowdy. We brought in Carlos Santana late. He provided a little bit of home run power, but not a lot. And then you look over at third base, Andrew Monasterio, very good contact hitter. I mean, one of the better hitters on this Brewers team last season there especially the second half, but he's not a power threat. And at that third base, traditionally, that's a power threat position. So if you're the Brewers right now, you definitely have to be looking still to add in that third base market or the first, especially first base. Because right now, Jake Bauers, you brought him over from the Yankees. You don't really know what he has for, skill there. He's got some good qualities there in contact, but not a lot in the power category like we're looking for there in this lineup. Christian Yelich doesn't add that thump to it. And you look at the rest of the outfielders, Joey Wiemer's a home run or bust kind of guy. But you look at Garrett Mitchell, Sal Frelick, Jackson Churro coming up. Those are more speed contact guys. Bryce Terang, more of a contact guy. William Contreras can bang the ball around, but he's more of a right field approach. I'm going to put it into a gap, and I'm going to go for two bases kind of guy. So all the way around, this Brewers team is lacking that power threat. I thought maybe bringing Mark Canha back after last season, I thought maybe he could be a big bat for the Brewers. They let him walk away. So, you look at this Brewers team and you say, okay, we bring Adames back after a down year, but we couldn't muster up $12 million for Mark Canha and let him walk away to the Detroit Tigers. So I don't know. To me, the Brewers are an interesting story right now because it's like they want to go into a sort of a rebuild and build with the rookies, but at the same time, they want, it's like they said a couple years ago, we want to take as many bites at the apple as possible. Well, we're taking nibbles at this point. I want him to take one big old bite. You have Corbin Burnes for one more season. Burnes is going to walk after this year. No way Corbin Burnes says, Milwaukee, I want to come back. After the way that negotiations went last year, this is his last year. Somebody out in the market's going to give him big money, so Burnes is going to walk. This pitching staff that the Brewers had orchestrated there with Freddie Peralta and Burnes and Woodruff, the three-headed monster, it's going away fast. And you have to kind of try to catch lightning in a bottle this year. And I just don't know with the Brewers ads, the way that they're doing it right now, that they're going to be able to muster that up, especially the way the Cubs are adding, especially the way the Cardinals will be back. Last season, they had a really down year, but Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, They're going to get healthy. They're going to find pitching out there. The Cardinals will be back. The Reds are only getting better, and the Pirates were sneaky last year. So, I mean, the NL Central is getting better all the way around, and I just really looking at the Brewers, hoping they don't get left in the dust in this situation. Anybody else got anything to add there with the Brewers?
I would just say trades like you were saying, I feel like they're at an impasse right now. It's like, are they trying to rebuild? Are they trying to give it one more shot? And like you were saying, I could completely see the Brewers, if they have a good first half of the season, trading for some big name guys and like saying this is the last year we're going for it, or at the trade deadline trading away all their guys. I could see it go either way. And at this point, I think it might be time to strip it down and start over because, like you said, it's not. They don't have a chance, I don't think.
They just, they do. In the retrospect, they do, but they just don't spend money. We know that. Mark Anastasio won't spend money. That's the big thing. We look at this last season. What were they missing? Like you said earlier, the big bat. They didn't have the big bat in the lineup. And it's like we refuse to make that deal for that big name bat. We won't do it. I am not, the Brewers weren't going to be in on Shohei Ohtani. I was, that was expected. I didn't even think about him. But there's the guys out there like last season, Justin Turner, coming from the Dodgers. He got into free agency there, and the Red Sox signed him for, I believe, like $8 million. And he goes and he hits 284, 290. He was up in that range all season long. Just a big bopper for the Red Sox. The Brewers couldn't muster up $8 million for Justin Turner to come to Milwaukee. That's nuts. I mean, we took Luke Voit instead, and Luke Voit was gone. We took Darren Ruff. Darren Ruff was gone. We take all these Jesse Winker. We take all these project guys, the guys that we hope that they'll go back to what they were at one point, like Jesse Winker. We were hoping that Jesse Winker would somehow, if he came back to the NL Central, he would find his power stroke again. He'd find his bat. He never did. And that's what I think the Brewers struggle with so much is the lack of finding star power out there. And the biggest problem right now, we have all these rookies on this roster, but we're relying so heavily on them. We aren't bringing any star power in to back them up. And these guys, I mean, they're not a power threat. They can all hit the long ball, but they're not going to hit it consistently. So you don't have the big boppers in this lineup. The pitching staff can't go lights out every single day. Like we saw, we relied so heavily on the pitching staff for the past couple of years. We get to the playoffs, we can't score. Everybody wanted to blame Craig Counsell this last season. Craig Counsell has taken some terrible Milwaukee Brewer teams and taken them to the playoffs consistently. You look at that team last year, they had no right to be in the playoffs. Looking at their offensive numbers, downright terrible. And you get into a playoff series against Diamondbacks, they're in Milwaukee, and they go, I mean, that game they had runners in scoring position 18 times. They had 18 chances or 18 guys on base, and they couldn't muster across the run in those situations. That's downright terrible baseball. And that, I mean, you can blame on Craig Counsell all you want, but bases loaded with one out, you got to be able to bring in a run. There's only so much your manager can do for you in that situation. So, I mean, a lot of it has to do with we don't have the star power to come up with big hits, and we rely so heavily on rookies to do it that at the end of the day, we get what we get if you're going to play baseball like that. And that's how Mark Anastasio has set up this Brewers organization.
Yeah, 100%. Like you were saying, star power. Like you watch these MLB playoffs, like the Phillies and these guys, all their stars are the ones with the big hits. It's not their rookie first-year guys. It's the stars, and they're hitting homers. The Phillies hit homers. The Dodgers hit homers. The Braves hit homers. That's the game nowadays. You got to be able to hit home runs with how good these pitchers are. You can't piece together 3-4 hits like you used to be able to anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. It's a tougher game now. Pitching's getting a little bit harder to hit, and that's just the way you got to trend with it. And a lot of it has to do with Brewers hitting coaches have never been good. We can't find a hitting coach to save our lives. We got two of them now. They can't figure anything out there in the dugout. I was convinced they were playing Angry Birds on their little iPads down there this last season because watching Joey Wiemer hit was like, I mean, they must have been playing Angry Birds because I was sitting there and I was angry watching him hit. Everything was wrong in his mechanics, and yet nobody did anything to fix them. That's just where I'm at with this Brewers organization right now is just the pieces don't fit. You want to win a championship, and they say, well, we want to still build championship teams. Well, prove it to me. Prove to me you want to win a championship by going out there. And I don't expect you to go make a contract like Bryce Harper got. I don't expect you to go make deals like the Padres made with looking at Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts and some of those guys, that Juan Soto deal out there. I don't expect that out of the Brewers, but something. Bringing in something to this Brewers organization. We went in one time for Yelich and Lorenzo Cain. We went in one time. Made it to the NLCS, made it to Game 7, lost it in Game 7, and then after that, it seemed like we just slowly started unloading the pieces. We just started dropping people off and just adding in these, hope to God they're going to end up as something good guys, and this is what we get year in and year out. We make it to the playoffs. We get we go in, people are like, okay, the pitching staff. You look at this Brewers team, nobody's scared of our offense. They haven't been scared of our offense since 2018. They are looking at our pitching staff, and that's it. It's easy to scheme for the Brewers offense, not so easy to scheme for them on the pitching side. So that's where I think right now the Brewers are sitting, and hopefully, as we saw here in arbitration, we maybe go out in the free agent pool and add some guys here before catchers and pitchers report here. I believe it's coming up pretty soon here. I think it's only 30-some days away from catchers and pitchers reporting there to Arizona. So with that, I just want to talk about Game Day Supply in Onalaska. You want to check out some sweet jerseys. They make you up some sweet jerseys down there at Game Day Supply. Check them out there in Onalaska. They do all kinds of stuff. Jerseys, hoodies, anything you want embroidered. They do designs for every single sporting event that you could have. If you got a youth team out there and you need a jersey made up, trust the people down there at Game Day Supply in Alaska. They'll get her done for you. So with that, I want to move on here. We got the Badgers in action. Badgers men's basketball in action coming up this weekend. They're going to be taking on Northwestern. That's going to be a pretty big matchup there for Wisconsin, 11 a.m. on Saturday. That game coming up from the Kohl Center. So Austin coming into this one, 12-3 Northwestern taking on 12-3 Wisconsin. What are some of the big guys to watch out for from Northwestern in this one?
Yeah, Northwestern, they're led by Boo Buie. He's averaging 18.1 points per game, along with 5.1 assists per game. He leads the team in both there. Rebounds per game is Brooks Barnhizer there. He averages 7.2 rebounds per game, but he also adds 13.9 points per game. And it says he's only a guard, so he's either a really tall guard or he's just really physical. But either way, you're gonna have to look out for that. And then Ty Berry, he adds 12.1 points per game there, along with 1.7 steals there for the Northwestern Wildcats. Northwestern, like you said, they're 12-3, second in the Big Ten. You look at some of the teams they played, though. They beat Purdue. They beat Purdue 92-88. It was a home game for Northwestern, but still a very impressive win by Northwestern. Boo Buie had 31 points in that one for Northwestern, but they did just recently lose to Illinois 96-66. So I'd say a very inconsistent team, and I don't think we're going to know which Northwestern team we're going to get until we see them. Luckily, this game is at Wisconsin, so I don't think it should matter. And also Wisconsin, they're playing some pretty hot basketball. They're ranked number 6 in offensive efficiency in the NCAA there for them, so that's pretty high. I imagine that's probably the highest our offensive efficiency has been since probably the Frank Kaminsky, Sam Decker era there back in 2015, 2014. So it's good to see that out of the Badgers, and this should be a good game, even though we're projected to win by 82.7%, still should be a pretty good game, I'd say.
Looking at this Northwestern team, like you were saying, Boo Buie. I mean, Northwestern goes as Boo Buie goes. He is the engine that makes that thing go for Northwestern. And, I mean, Bartenheiser, very good guard for this Northwestern team. He's kind of one of the under-the-radar guys. He's averaging 13 points a game, so you would think that's not much under the radar, but Boo Buie gets so much attention that you kind of forget about Bartenheiser at times. So this Wisconsin, they're going to have to watch out for Bartenheiser. He gets on the glass, too, leading them in rebounds, just under there in points per game right now, and steals. He is all over the basketball. Very good defender. So the Badgers will have trouble. The two guards from Northwestern are going to give the Badgers fits in this one, and they have to weather that storm. It's going to be like playing Ohio State all over again. You had Jamison Battle and Bruce Thornton in that one. You're going to have Boo Buie and Bartenheiser in this one. Badgers definitely in this ball game, though. The paint again. We talk about it every week. The paint is where the Badgers will win this game against Northwestern. You got to control the paint. A big game from Steven Crowl is what the Badgers need in this one. In that last one against Ohio State, injury derailed what Steven Crowl gave to the Badgers in that one. He was banged up going into that ball game, but he still delivered big minutes for the Badgers. And I thought that was the big thing in that game is even with that injury, not able to muscle up like he usually does, he still added big minutes and still was able to facilitate the basketball. Badgers heavily reliant on the three, it looked like against Ohio State in the first half there. Threes aren't falling in this one against Northwestern. They got to get inside, and I think that is going to be the big key in this one is Steven Crowl getting it going in the paint. Tyler Wall has been big for the Badgers this year. Coming off of last season, he struggled, came back for his COVID year, coming back to the Badgers. This season, he's putting it all out there. He's playing well for the Badgers, and I think Tyler Wall, going into this one against Northwestern, he has a lot to prove this season, and he's playing like he does. And I think the free throw line will be big against Northwestern. Badgers have been banging at the free throw line as of late. Tyler Wall getting to the line and hitting those shots when he gets there. I think that's going to be a big thing to watch out for in this one. But definitely the guard play with Boo Buie and Barnhizer going up against Klesman and Chucky Hepburn. That's going to be the big matchups to watch out for in this game against Northwestern. Rogan, what are you seeing from this Northwestern team going up against Wisconsin? Some of the things you like, some of the things you worry about going into this one.
Yeah, Trage, I like the Northwestern basketball team. I think they've actually got a pretty decent team this year. And like Austin was saying, they've struggled a little bit with consistency, but 12-3 is no joke. It's hard to win 12 out of your first 15 games. So I think they've actually got a pretty solid squad that's kind of underrated, so the Badgers better watch out. And like I was just talking to Austin here, last year the Badgers struggled against Northwestern. They lost both games to Northwestern last year, and like you were saying, Boo Buie was a big reason why. He had 13 points in the first game, which isn't a lot, but they only scored 54 as a team. And the second game he had 20 against the Badgers. So definitely the Wildcats give the Badgers a little bit of trouble, and I think this is a game that I'm worried the Badgers might come out a little not focused because it's Northwestern, but I think Northwestern is a good team and could definitely get the Badgers at home, so they better watch out.
Yeah, and they are definitely a decent three-point shooting team. When you look at this Northwestern team all the way around, Boo Buie shooting about 34%. He shoots the most out of all of them there. But you look at Ty Berry, 45% from downtown on this season, Ty Berry. So Berry's a guy to watch out for there. They're going to go a little bit smaller. Northwestern will in this ballgame. They have some size there in the guard position, but the Badgers definitely have the size advantage. They like to mix up the big men there with Nicholson and Martinelli. They like to mix around the big guys there. So getting the big guys in foul trouble, like we talked about against Ohio State, getting Zedki Akpara, it didn't happen that way, but getting one of those guys into foul trouble, in this one, Nicholson or Martinelli, getting one of those two into foul trouble definitely will spell trouble for Northwestern. I mean, Nicholson cannot be relied on to play too heavily. Looking at his minutes per game this season, 19 minutes per game. If you look at Nicholson, and Martinelli is averaging about 19 minutes a game. So they're about even splits of what you're going to get out of those two big men in this matchup here. Martinelli averaging a little bit more there in the point department, but Nicholson, very good defender. He's averaging about 1.4 blocks per game on the season so far. So Steven Crowl is going to have his hands full in the paint there. Going to take some good moves in the paint to get open against Nicholson, and I think that's going to be a big thing to watch out for in this one. So I'm looking at, I would say in this ball game, the Badgers will need, and I think they'll get big games out of Connor Essegian coming back home for this game against Northwestern. And then I'm looking at AJ Storr. I think the mid-range game for Wisconsin is going to be big in this one. So, Rogan, give me your key players for the Badgers in this one going up against Northwestern.
Yeah, like you were saying, I think it's important for Essegian to get it going. Like I'm going to harp this again. We really need him to get going on the offensive side of the ball, especially he's our best three-point shooter, and the Badgers struggle with threes. And if the Badgers can hit threes, like they're a really hard team to beat. But you see when they lose, they cannot hit anything from outside. So yeah, Essegian, and I'd like to see Chucky get it going this game. He hasn't really had a huge game yet this year, and I'm just waiting for it to happen. But he's done a really good job of facilitating the offense. I know last year people were complaining that he was forcing up a lot of shots, but he's done a really good job this year with passing and stuff like that. But I think he might have a big game against the Northwestern Wildcats coming up here.
We talked about it, I think it was last week. We were talking about Chucky, and I think he's been playing phenomenal this year. I think he's actually taken his game to another level, not forcing shots, not trying to do too much. Now he's just, like you said, the facilitator of the offense, but I think that is a dynamic role for him, and I think it takes his game to another level. Last year, I was the guy who was harping on him every single week, watching him play. I was like, my gosh. Why? Again. Why are we forcing this shot? Why are we forcing this shot? This season, no forced shots. He's taking good shots, good clean shots, and I mean, it's paying dividends for him right now, looking at the way he's shooting the basketball. Not so hot from downtown in his percentage-wise, but other than that, I mean, you can't really say Chucky Hepburn isn't having a productive season for the Badgers. So, Austin, who are you looking at for your key players to watch out for the Badgers in this one?
Yeah, I'm looking at Steven Crowell mainly because of that knee injury. I want to see how he's able to do against another guy, the 7-footer that Northwestern has there. Just see how he's holding up in there. And also, I mean, we saw Nick Winters out there, and we kind of pointed out he did play decent. I mean, he had 7 points, but he was a little bit more frail compared to Steven Crowell. So having Steven Crowell out there is huge for the Badgers. And so I kind of want to see how he's able to hold up. And then also Max Klesmit. I want to see if he's able to continue to keep growing there as a player. He had 18 points last week, but all of them were in the second half. When is he going to start producing the first half? That's kind of what I want to see out of him. Overall, I think Max Klesmit, he's playing a lot better than what he was playing. I'll tell you that. I mean, start of the season, I was telling you, Trey, start Blackwell over him because of how much more productive Blackwell was over Max Klesmit. But these past few games, I think Max Klesmit's finally found his role, and he's starting to produce a little bit more. But 18 points is good, obviously, but all in the second half. I mean, I'm sure he can find something in the first half that he can get, and that'll help the Badgers tremendously, I think.
Yeah, Max, he's had 2 games now. You look at the first half against Marquette, and you look at the second half against Ohio State, and those are the 2 big games for Max Klesmit on the season. Other than that, I mean, he reminds me a lot of Josh Gasser. When I think about Max Klesmit, he reminds me a lot of Josh Gasser. He can come up with big shots at times, but he's more of a defensive-oriented player. That's where he's going to live and die, is on the defensive end of the court. He doesn't want to be relied on the offensive end. He wants you to rely on Steven Crowell, on AJ Storr, on Tyler Wall. Get those 3 guys going. Max Klesmit will be there if you need him. And that's what we saw against Ohio State. First half wasn't really there. Second half, he got it going at the end when they needed him. So I thought that was a big thing to watch out for there. So the Badgers in action, they'll be taking on Northwestern there at 11 on BTN on Saturday. So with that, I want to jump over. We got the women's side of college basketball. We have Wisconsin taking on Michigan. That'll be coming up on Saturday, a 1 o'clock start there for the Badgers, and Michigan coming from the Chrysler Center there in Ann Arbor. Badgers coming in this one 8-7, 1-4 in conference play. Michigan coming in at 11-5, 2-2 in conference play. Michigan coming off 2 losses though, against Indiana, against Minnesota. Wisconsin coming in off of a loss against Northwestern. So Austin, who are we looking at for some of the key players in this one coming up against the Michigan Wolverines?
Michigan's mainly led by 2 people here. Lila Filia, she's averaging 15.7 points per game, and Lauren Hansen, she's averaging 11.8 points per game. The Wolverines also led by Cameron Williams for rebounds. She's averaging 5 rebounds per game. Lauren Hansen's leading the team with 2.4 assists per game. But scoring-wise, it's led by Lila Filia with that 15.7. As a team, they average 71.6 points per game. So that's pretty decent there for Michigan, and they also average 39 rebounds per game. So overall, they're a pretty decent team. I mean, they're 11-5 overall, so that's really good. Like you said, they lost a couple games here recently, so definitely could be coming, or it is a home game for Michigan, so that definitely helps them, but they could still be a little bit shaky from Indiana and Minnesota. But they did recently beat Ohio State, who was ranked 17th in the country. So they got some decent wins, but like you said, coming off of 2 losses, they could be a little shaky, and who knows? This could be Wisconsin's time to strike.
These two teams, when you look at this matchup, 2 of the worst free throw shooting teams in the Big Ten. Michigan coming in 70%, Wisconsin coming in 71%. So the charity stripe, winning at the charity stripe is definitely going to be the big thing in this game. Looking at how bad they are shooting it at the free throw line, whoever figures it out in this one is definitely going to have the upper hand. Badgers entering this game, putting up about 66 per game right now, and the Wolverines coming in, putting up about 71% on the season so far, right? Or 71 points per game on the season so far. So Badgers, this should be a good game. I think this is going to be a good game. I don't really, looking at this Michigan team, I'm not overly impressed by what I've seen out of Michigan so far this season. So I think it's going to be a big game for Wisconsin. I think they can get, I really do think they can get a win there on the road. If you got to have everything go right, you got to be able to shoot the basketball, and definitely winning at the charity stripe is going to be a big aspect in this game. But also in action on Saturday, Marquette women will be taking on DePaul. Number 23 Marquette sitting at 14-2, taking on 9-8 DePaul. That should be a decent matchup there. DePaul coming off 3 straight losses against Georgetown, Providence, and Creighton as of late. Marquette coming in, they dropped 2 in a row, but then they got big wins against Xavier and Seton Hall. This game will be from the Pfizer in Milwaukee. So are in at the Al McGuire Center in Milwaukee. So should be a pretty big matchup there for Marquette taking on DePaul. But with that, I want to jump in and talk about Pittsville Farm and Home Center in Pittsville. They serve you anything from hydraulic hoses to red roses. Stop in and see them and the awesome crew down there at Pittsville Farm and Home in Pittsville. But with that, I want to jump over to Austin with our fact of the day.
On this day in 1992, it was the highest scoring NCAA basketball game between Troy State Trojans and the DeVry Hoyas. Troy State beat DeVry 258-149 in Troy, Alabama.
Was there was there 7 overtimes?
I didn't do research. I mean, I just looked it up, Trage. I mean, that's what I had. And I thought it was pretty cool.
Well, it's cool and all, but that's pretty high scoring for regulation basketball. So now it has me thinking that there had to have been
It definitely had some overtimes. I got Rogan over here. He's checking it up right now. He's doing some research.
Rogan, you let me know when you got something up there. So with that, I want to talk about real quick Century 21 Gold Key Realty. Call Peggy Sue or Anna to find your dream home, or if you're looking to sell. Find them on Facebook at Home Team Century 21 Gold Key Realty, or stop in and see them at their location in Marshfield. But with that, I want to jump into our sports story of the day. Right away, I'm going to jump to Austin. Give me your sports story of the day.
Yeah, my sports story of the day, it comes from the Pat McAfee show. Now, there's been a lot of controversy. I talk about the Pat McAfee show a lot because, I mean, they talk about a lot of good stuff in sports, and a lot of times it's stuff from Wisconsin. But anyways, this is about Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers, he said some controversial stuff on the Pat McAfee show regarding some sensitive topics, we'll say. And so Pat McAfee came out and said that he's no longer going to be on the show, and that a lot of people are going to be happy that he's not on the show, blah, 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 probably from ESPN. Well, yesterday, Aaron Rodgers appeared on the show, and he talked about everything, and it's weird that Pat McAfee said that he wasn't going to be on the show anymore, and that he kind of said it was like Pat McAfee was saying that he's happy, like his everything's going to be a lot better and everything's going to be a lot more smooth now that Aaron Rodgers isn't doing his weekly Tuesday interview, I guess you could say, the Aaron Rodgers Tuesday, and now he's back on there on Thursday. So it's kind of weird that Pat McAfee would do that, especially with his contract with ESPN, that he has with his show. But honestly, I kind of like it because Pat McAfee, before being on ESPN, he was a lot more free-flowing. He could do a lot more things with his show, and now being on ESPN, it seems like there's a lot more regulations and things that he has to follow by, and I think it's cut his show just a little bit. People still love Pat McAfee, but you can definitely tell ESPN has their media and their factor into things. So it was definitely a weird thing to see by Pat McAfee, but Aaron Rodgers is still not leaving the spotlight as of now.
Well, and you look at, I mean, when I look at Pat McAfee, I this is a controversial topic, but I have, the way ESPN has been trending for years, I've been starting to slowly lose some respect for ESPN. We watched it with, recently the firings of Max Kellerman. He was let go by ESPN. They had a couple guys let go at ESPN. A lot of that had to do with money. They combined with Disney, losing money left and right. That's a whole different topic. We're not even going to get into that. But I've lost a lot of respect for ESPN in general. And I thought Pat McAfee, the best thing for him was to go back on his own. I thought when Pat McAfee was his own thing, he was with FanDuel, and he was his own thing. I thought that show, I thought it was phenomenal. And now going to ESPN, I thought his show has actually taken a little bit of a dip. I've actually stopped really watching it as much as I used to with Pat McAfee. And now with Aaron Rodgers and the controversy, and then one day later, Aaron Rodgers is back on the show. Ratings, everything like that, getting Aaron Rodgers on there, that's also a big thing. Also, Rodgers coming back on, they brought him back on to talk about Bill Belichick, so that was a big key in that one. So it's definitely controversial what's going on with the Pat McAfee show, ESPN, and everything in between. Rogan, anything you want to touch in on the whole subject there?
Oh, yeah. I thought it was kind of odd. Like yesterday, he's talking about how he's just going to enjoy not really having to deal with all the added stress and like news coverage they get because of what Rodgers says. And then the next day, they've got Rodgers back on. But like you said, love or hate Rodgers, he brings in viewers. People want to watch him. And even if they hate him, they like watching him. So on McAfee's part, it's probably not actually the worst decision viewership-wise. But, yeah, confusing like you guys were saying.
Yeah, and it's just watching. I don't know. It baffled me. It really did baffle me. And the thing with it is that Pat McAfee lets Rodgers get into some of this stuff. You can't really be that upset at Rodgers because you let him talk. You let him on the show. You let him do this kind of stuff on the show. That's what this is going to lead to. We know Rodgers is a little far out sometimes. We know that. We know that from listening to him talk. He's a little far out. He went and sat in a dark, he sat in a dark tunnel or a dark cave for how long? And we wanted to question Aaron Rodgers' mental state. Looking at him, he's a little far out there. And bringing him on the show there, you knew you were going to get something like this at some point. He was going to bring something up. He's talked about Fauci on there. He's talked about a lot of stuff that ESPN, that's just the way I think ESPN is trending. When I tune into ESPN now, back in the day, I used to tune into ESPN, it was sports. That's what you talked about on there. It was sports. Now ESPN is getting into this bigger brand where it's all over the place. They get into the political game. I know we're getting controversy here, but they get into the political game. They get into this. They get into that. They get out of the realm of sports. I just wish they would stay in sports. And I think that is where they're this is a big story, and that's where they're trending towards, is getting into those kind of stories because they've set themselves up for that. So with that, we're going to move out of the Pat McAfee show and Aaron Rodgers. We're going to get to Rogan. Rogan, give me your sports story of the day.
Yeah, Trey, I was going to come on here today and talk about Bill Belichick being fired yesterday, but right before we started filming, news came across that the NCAA is penalizing Florida State football, and they're actually getting a 2-year probation and no longer allowed to use the NIL collective for one season. So that's actually pretty big news. And I'm just going to read this straight out of the article because I don't want anyone to get confused. They're being put on probation for violating rules on using name, image, and likeness offers as a recruiting inducement, which I read through this article, and it's really confusing to me. So basically, they're getting put on probation for using the NIL to like incentivize players coming to play for their program, which I thought that's what the NIL was for, and you cannot tell me that every other football team in the country is not doing the exact same thing. And in my opinion, I think this is just kind of a hit job. Like, obviously, FSU's coming off like their undefeated season and a lot of controversy on whether they should have been in the playoff or not. And they're making a big fuss about leaving the ACC now. So it's just odd that this comes out at this time from the NCAA. But this is nothing new from the NCAA. Everyone's kind of sick and tired of how they run their operation, and stuff like this just doesn't not make any sense in my opinion.
I just, you knew this was going to happen. You start bringing money into a game, and there's going to be bribery and everything else in between. People act like, colleges and coaches were saints before NIL became a thing. You really don't think there was bribing going on before NIL became a thing? You really don't think there was this bribing going on before paying players and getting them to your university became a thing? No. There has been we have been paying these guys for years. You just think that guys just say, I'm going to go here because that's just going to be where I want to end up? No, that's not it. There's money. There's something involved in there. You look at Rick Pitino out there with Louisville back in the day. He had, escorts, female escorts would be hired to go with some of these recruits coming into Louisville. And that's how he was trying to get guys into Louisville. So, stuff like this has happened for years. It's just now with NIL, it's getting more put underneath of a microscope. And like you said, with everything else that's going on with Florida State, now this comes out too. Fantastic. Now DeSantis has something else to sue the NCAA for. The NCAA is a crooked. I love college sports, trust me, but the NCAA is crooked, and they have been crooked, and they're going to continue to be crooked. That's just how they are. They are a bunch of big rig guys who don't give a crap. They're out there to try and push their narrative on the world, and we just got to listen to it. And that's what we're seeing right now. We talked about yesterday the mess of college sports. This just proves it once again how corrupt and crappy the NCAA is with this. So with that, I want to jump out of there. We're going to move into the Packers. The real reason why everybody is here today, why we're here, is to talk about the Packers taking on Dallas coming up this weekend. That is going to be, I think, one of the bigger playoff games of the weekend to me. I really do think this game with Dallas and Green Bay is going to chalk up to be one of the better ones. Sunday, 3:30 kickoff there on Fox. Dallas is favored going into this one. Austin, give me some of the key guys here we want to watch out for in this ball game from Dallas.
Yeah, Dallas, their main attack is passing, kind of like what we were talking about yesterday, and that's due to the fact that Dak Prescott, pretty good quarterback. He's 410 completions for 590 attempts, so 69.5% completion percentage, 4,516 yards passing, 36 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, only sacked 39 times. So a lot of what they do is through the passing game, and I think the Packers are going to see the same out of this Dallas Cowboys offense here.
Yeah, and looking at, the big storyline in this, Mike McCarthy, the Dallas Cowboys coming in on a 16-game home win streak going into this game against the Packers. Jordan Love making his postseason debut. A lot of these Packers making their postseason debut in this one. And looking at this game, Dallas, do they overlook Green Bay a little bit? Can you come out and can you punch them in the mouth, right? You go into a game, you're kind of under the radar. People are talking about Jordan Love now, right? They're saying Jordan Love's finally figuring out. He's starting to get a little bit better here going into the playoffs on this second half of the season. And is Dallas, do they overlook the Packers? Do they not expect the Packers to come out with a little bit of fire? I think, the big thing for Green Bay leading up into this ball game, can they come out hot? If you start out this game and say Dallas starts with the football, you turn Dallas over, you force a 3-and-out, Packers get the ball back, they drive down, they put in the end zone, it's 7-zip to start this game out. That's where I'm, you got to be able to, if you want to win this game, you're going, it's like that little kid on the playground going up against a bully, right? You got the little kid in the Green Bay Packers taking on the big bad bully in the Dallas Cowboys. Can the little guy get that first swing in on the bully and knock him off his feet? That's what I think the Packers really have to key in on this one, is starting out hot. You can't start out slow. We've seen Green Bay start out slow this season. You can't start out slow against the Dallas Cowboys, especially on the road, because that is going to spell disaster for them. Rogan, give me some thoughts here about this Packers matchup.
Yeah, Trey, I'm just looking at I think it's going to be really important for the Packers to be healthy in this game, and I'm looking at the injury report here, and it seems like we might have some guys coming back. It looks like Watson's probably going to be good to go. We might have Campbell back for this game, along with Darnell Savage. But there is one guy on here that is new, and that's Jaire Alexander. Yesterday during practice, he rolled his ankle pretty bad in a walkthrough, and now is considered day-to-day. So I honestly, if Jaire's out, I see this game for the Packers is going to be really tough. They need Jaire in there to match up with CeeDee Lamb. And if you don't have him in there, you're relying on guys like Valentine, who are good players, but they're just not at the caliber yet to guard a guy like CeeDee Lamb. So I think it's going to be really important for the Packers to get some of these guys back, like Watson, like Dobbs, like hopefully Alexander's healthy, and Campbell. And yeah, I think that's where the game's going to be decided, is really the injury report.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Jaire. That sucked to see that he went down. I would expect if Jaire feels anywhere near 90%, he's going to be out there on this field for the Packers. I expect most of the roster to be out there. I believe, like you said, the injury report was small. I think if Christian Watson is ever going to play and we're going to rely on Christian Watson ever again, he's got to be in this ball game here for the Packers. I think a big thing there, leaning on the defense, putting pressure on Dak Prescott in this game is going to be massive. That defensive line for the Packers, and I believe especially with Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary has had moments of this season where he's flashed some moments of greatness in this season. Rashawn Gary has. He's got 9 sacks on the year so far, 2 multi-sack games, 2 forced fumbles, and 7 tackles for loss. Rashawn Gary and this defensive line are going to be huge. But in this game, we can't see flashes. We got to see an outright just dominant performance from this Green Bay Packers defensive line to really force the issue and put some pressure on Dak Prescott. Like we were talking yesterday, the turnover battle is going to have to be a win for Green Bay. They cannot turn the football over in this game, and they have to find a way. You look at that game against the Chiefs, right? That game, there was back and forth all game long. We turned Patrick Mahomes over. It was late in that ball game, but we turned Patrick Mahomes over, and that was a big turning point in that game, that Keyshawn Nixon interception. I think it's going to be the same in this ball game here. Getting a turnover against Dak Prescott, maybe it's early in this one. Like I said, punching him in the mouth early, and I think maybe with an interception, maybe turning over this Dallas Cowboy team, that could spell trouble for the Cowboys, getting some momentum, right, leading into the later portions of this game. Austin, any thoughts you have with this Packers team taking on Dallas here on Sunday?
Yeah, and it's not just their pass game, too. I mean, we talked about yesterday that they're mainly pass, like I said earlier also, but Tony Pollard still has 1,000 yards rushing here. So they're not going to abandon the rushing attack. He has 6 rushing touchdowns, and their backup running back also has 2 rushing touchdowns. Dak Prescott also adds another 2, and even CeeDee Lamb's getting 2 rushing touchdowns. So even with all of that, all that passing, with CeeDee Lamb adding 1,749 receiving yards, they're not going to abandon the rush game. And I know that's the Packers' least favorite thing to do is our rush defense. So it's going to still be a struggle, or still going to be a challenge, not just passing for how much they do it, but also trying to contain their rush attack and try and make them one-dimensional.
Yeah, and like I completely agree with you there. Mike McCarthy definitely knows what the Packers have. He knows the run defense isn't as stellar as what we have. A better pass defense than we do in that run defense, and that's why I think the defensive line has to come big for Green Bay. Looking at the flip side of it on the offense there, like we talked about, Jordan Love going into his first postseason game with the Green Bay Packers. A lot of these players going into their first postseason game. Aaron Jones is one of the veterans on this Packers team in that backfield for Green Bay. I think that, like I talked about yesterday, when Aaron Jones can get a touch, give him a touch. I think the Packers need to lean on Aaron Jones in this game against the Dallas Cowboys, especially controlling the clock. I think if the Packers can control time of possession in this game, keep Dak Prescott in that explosive Dallas offense on the sideline, I think that's going to spell trouble for Dallas, and getting Aaron Jones going, that's going to take the pressure off of Jordan Love in this game. He doesn't have to throw the ball as much, right? Like Rogan, I remember you talking yesterday, this Dallas secondary is very good. They have a very good secondary down there in Dallas, and looking at their run defense, not as good. They don't get in the backfield as much. I mean, Micah Parsons still stellar there. They're going to have to worry about Micah Parsons in this game, but not having Jordan Love have to throw the ball around as much, I think that's going to be a big thing in this one. So getting Aaron Jones going is going to be a huge aspect in this one. Rogan, on the offensive side for Green Bay, what are you looking at as some of your keys for this Packers team?
Yeah, like you say, Micah Parsons, they're going to have a good plan with him. And if you've watched games with like the Eagles or even the Bills, like the Bills ran at Micah Parsons. That's kind of what you have to do with him. You have to put him – a lot of times the Eagles and Bills left Micah Parsons completely unblocked and made him make decisions in open field just to slow him down a little bit, get him thinking. Because if you just do simple blocks and chips with him, he is so fast and quick to react to the ball that it's almost impossible to block the guy. So you really got to put him in situations where he's got to decide what he's going to do, and that just slows him down, not only in the run game, but then you start getting him thinking in the passing game. And like if you watch how the Eagles play him and the Bills play him, a lot of times they run right at him, and a lot of times they leave him unblocked. So you just got to get him second-guessing himself because he's too good of a player to do basic blocks and stuff like that with. So that's what I think is going to be really important for the Packers offense, how they're going to block this defensive line. And you have to mix up looks for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And maybe keeping a back in the backfield a couple times there too, trying to help out Jordan Love, give him a little bit more time to make reads out there. I think that could be a big aspect in this one. Dallas does lack, like we're talking, they don't have as good of a pass rush. Kind of surprising there with some of the pieces that they have in DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. They actually rank 13th in the NFL there in sack totals on the year. Their pass rush rate, though, with a 59% success rate, they are number one in the NFL in pass rush rate right now. So, and then you look at the flip side of that, you look at this Green Bay Packers offensive line. They are actually ranked number 2 in ESPN's pass block win rate on the season so far. So you're going to have a pretty good Packers pass block going up against a very good pass rush from this, not a good sack rate, but a good pass rush. So they're making quarterbacks have to make quick decisions there in the backfield. So with the Packers going into this one, it's going to be heavily reliant on what does this Packers offensive line do. I mean, you look at some of the pieces there, Zach Tom. I was looking at a stat about Rasheed Walker. He's only given up 13 pressures and committed only 2 penalties over the last 8 games of the season. Rasheed Walker's playing great. Josh Myers has been playing great. So Austin, giving it from the offensive line perspective there in this one, what are you looking at as some of your keys there to slow down that Dallas pass rush?
Yeah, I mean, like I think we talked about this way earlier in the year, that the Packers, their offensive line, they were switching guys in and out. Like you were saying, Rasheed Walker, he got some snaps in there. And Nyman, he was getting in there. Zach Tom was in there. Like our tackles were switching around. Even some of our guards with Runyon and Elgton Jenkins. But now it seems like we finally have an O-line, at least for the past few weeks. We have a stable O-line with Walker, Elgton Jenkins, Josh Myers, John Runyon, and then Zach Tom there. And so far, it's been really good. I mean, like you said, they're number 2 in basically number 2 in pass blocking, I guess you can call it. And I mean, I'm interested to see how they're able to do against probably one of the best pass defenses the Packers are going to see all year. I mean, they're going to have to give Jordan Love time to pass the ball. I mean, Jordan Love, he's not bad when he escapes the pocket. He's able to make those throws. but he also gets a little uncomfortable sometimes and makes some bad decisions, chucks it down the field. Next thing you know, it's basically a punt on first down. And we've seen that from Jordan Love, but that was also earlier in the year too. I think Jordan Love's become a little bit more sound in the pocket. And he's also had better decisions when he's had to flee the pocket too. But so far, our O-line has been playing spectacular. Yes, we've given up a few sacks against last week. And yes, probably a few weeks before that. Sacks are going to happen. Sacks are part of the game. You're going, especially when you go up against a really good defense. Let me tell you, Cowboys, they're probably going to get 2 or 3. Micah Parsons probably going to get a sack. It's just how it is. The thing is, you have to limit when those sacks happen. It can't be a sack on third down and now we have to punt the ball. If it's a sack, at least have it be on second down. I want also for our offense in general, if it's 1st and 10, I want to be running the ball almost every time if it's 1st and 10. I mean, worst case scenario is you lose 1 yard, you get back to the line of scrimmage. Like, that's not bad. But the best case scenario is you split a gap and you can get 15 yards, especially with Aaron Jones, how he's been running the ball and how our line has been blocking. I mean, it seems like it's too good to be true that our O-line, a lot of doubt went into our O-line at the beginning of the year, and now they're playing some of the best football that, I mean, we've seen from an O-line in a while, that we haven't seen from an O-line in a while. It seems like, I mean, Josh Myers was hurt for a while there at center, so we were Elton Jenkins, very underrated player. I mean, we drafted him not too long ago, and he can play every single position on the O-line. I don't think some people might think, oh, every single O-line position is practically the same. No, it is not. Right tackle, the guard, to center, all three are very different from how you set on a player to how you run block them. And for the Packers to have a player that's able to do all 3 positions, left side and right side, very crucial. But right now, he's at left guard, and hopefully he stays there because all 5 of our linemen that are starting have been playing really, really good. And, I mean, they're going to have to play their best football on Sunday night, or Sunday afternoon, I guess you can call it.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. And the thing I key on there was Micah Parsons. Like he said, you're going to have a sack. We're going to give up. Micah Parsons is going to get in the backfield at some point. But I go off of what Rogan said earlier, and it's keeping him on his toes, right? Don't let a star player like Micah Parsons settle into this game. I think that's going to be a big thing for the Packers there, especially in that offensive line. Keeping Micah Parsons on his toes. You let him settle into this game, it's going to be a long night for Jordan Love there in the backfield trying to make throws. But if Micah Parsons is constantly on his toes, not knowing what's coming next, I think that's going to be a big thing for Green Bay in this one. Looking at what Dan Quinn, like we talked about there yesterday, he's going to drop a lot of blitzes in this one. He's going to try and put pressure on Jordan Love. He's going into his first playoff game. The jitters are there. You can't deny, any quarterback, you're going to have some jitters, pregame jitters going this one, especially going down to Dallas. I mean, that crowd down there is going to be huge coming into a game where Dallas needs this win more than what the Packers do, especially. So the pressure is on for Dallas in this game. You're going to hear a lot of, I was listening to Bill Michaels was talking about it, and you're going to hear a lot of crap, right? You're going to hear a lot of guys trash talking. You're going to hear a lot of fans trash talking. You have to feed into it. You have to take it and let it fuel you in this game to really get yourself going here in this one, especially Jordan Love, those kind of guys. Use that crowd interaction and let it fuel you to drive into that next play. I think that's going to be a big thing to watch out for in this one is how do the Packers react to the noise and everything else in this one? Because Dallas is going to be rocking. AT&T Stadium is going to be rocking for this one. How do the Packers and this young Packers team react to a playoff atmosphere, especially not at home, on the road in their first playoff game? So I think that's going to be a big thing to watch out there. Austin, what do you got?
Like you were saying with Cowboys having pressure, on them, you look at how many times the Cowboys have played the Packers in the playoffs, and it has not gone well for the Cowboys, whether that's at Lambeau Field or AT&T Stadium. Either way, it has not been good for the Cowboys. I think that's the biggest pressure they have is trying to get over the hump of being the Green Bay Packers in the playoffs. They got the Dez caught it game, I guess you want to call it. It seems like that's been looming over them for the past how many years. They have the Aaron Rodgers throws it to Jared Cook on the sideline. Mason Crosby makes the field goal. the hand of God that pushed in the field goal they want to call. They're coming up with a bunch of stupid excuses. If you can't beat this Green Bay Packers team, then you shouldn't be the number 2 ranked team in the NFL because, look at the team that the Packers have. They're working with a bunch of young guys that a lot of them is their first time ever playing in a playoff game. I think almost probably half the team have not been in the playoffs before. So it's definitely going to be interesting, but I think there's a lot of pressure on the Cowboys. Rogan, what do you got?
I just got to say quick, we were talking about the pass rush there. The Cowboys like to stunt a lot on the defensive line. So obviously Austin's an old lineman. I was an old lineman back in the day with Austin, and the biggest part of the stunt is communication. And that's the one thing with the Packers offensive line. They're super young. So I really worry about – that's the thing I worry about is communication. Because if you can communicate, stunts aren't that hard to deal with. But it's the lack of communication that can really come back to bite you with stunts. And Dallas does it more than any team in the NFL. So they definitely got to watch out for that on Sunday.
I think the big thing, like you're saying, their communication, I think they've gotten better at communicating as this season's gone on. And I think that's because they've started to find that regular group that's going to be out there. Like we were talking about earlier, they were constantly switching guys in and out. They were trying to find the right pieces in there. Now they've seemed to have settled on their best offensive line. And I think that's going to help them in this game. They're a tight-knit group. That's what I think they can really rely on in this one is that they're growing together. They've grown together throughout this season, and I think that's going to show here against Dallas. So definitely going to be a massive matchup we're going to be watching. We're hoping for a Packers win, and we're talking about a win on Monday when we come back here, talking about the Packers moving on and facing whoever comes out of the other divisional round of matchup there. But with that, I want to move on. Anybody else got anything else to add for the Packers before we move on here? All good across the board. So we're going to move on here. We got to talk about the NFL weekend schedule. We got the playoffs starting, so we're going to pick the games here. I'll pick first. I'll move on to Austin, and I'll jump over to Rogan there with that next pick. So with our first game of the playoff schedule, this is actually, to me, one of the most enticing matchups of this weekend. I think it's going to be one of the better games. The Browns and the Texans. The Texans got a terrible draw for a first-round matchup. They're going up against Joe Flacco and the red-hot Browns. I'm going to take the Texans to win that one at home up against the Browns. It's going to be a tough game. The defense for the Texans is going to have to play well, and C.J. Stroud is going to have one of his better games. But I like the Texans at home in this one. I think they're riding a hot wave into the playoffs.
Trage, I'm not surprised that you picked the Texans because that's your team. I'll admit you've rolled with them. I'll admit it. You're not, you're kind of a bandwagon. I'm not going to lie. You kind of hopped on their train. Want to start playing good. But, they're only 9-8. So
I've been on that train since J.J. Watt went down there from Madison because I was a big J.J. Watt fan.
I guess. Hey, they're a good team to cheer for because they're in the AFC. But with that being said, give me Joe Money Flacco and the Cleveland Browns over there, man. Joe Flacco did sit – a lot of their players sat out last game, so that could affect them a little bit. But, going into Texas there, I got to go Cleveland. I want to see Joe Flacco go back to Baltimore and see what that atmosphere is like. I think that'd be electric.
Rogan, what do we got?
Yeah, guys, I'm going to have to go with Cleveland. And in my opinion, I don't think it's going to be even close. I think Cleveland's going to win by a lot. They've been playing really good, and their defense is – as good as it gets. And Flacco's really got this offense humming. So in my opinion, I think this could be a 3-score game. I think it's Browns big.
I want you to go and look at Joe Flacco turnovers with the Browns. I want you to look at the amount of interceptions he's throwing with the Browns and his touchdown to interception ratio with the Browns, because that might change some perspective on this game, because if the Texans can turn them over, at NRG Stadium, the Texans have been waiting for a playoff game. CJ and the offense are rolling. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. If the Browns win, I think it's going to be close. I think this game will be close both ways. But with that, the next game on Saturday, there's 2 Saturday games, will be the Dolphins and the Chiefs. They're talking the high for this game. Right now, according to AccuWeather, they have it at 1 degree, but I heard it's going to be in the negatives for that game, so it's going to be frigid cold. And the Dolphins are 0-10 when they travel to frigid, cold temperatures and play football games. So I'm going to take the Chiefs to pull off a win at home. It's hard to beat the Chiefs. It's hard to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. Until somebody beats them, I can't go against them. And I just think with the weather permitting, I think that's going to help the Chiefs in this one pull off a win.
Yeah, with you saying that, and I also saw a little bit on Instagram about the weather. I mean, NFL is posting about it for how cold it's going to be. I mean, the only person for Miami that's probably played in that type of weather consistently is Tyreek Hill. And, I mean, Tyreek Hill, he's been pretty good, but he's like the only player for Miami that's been making plays. I don't know if Jalen Waddle's even playing for Miami. He could be hurt still. Not entirely sure, but honestly, with Kansas City, it's at Kansas City, loudest stadium, arguably in the NFL, and with how cold it's going to be, I don't think you can go against them in this one.
Yeah, you guys are making good points. Miami struggles in the cold weather, but I don't know. I don't like this Kansas City team this year. This offense has really been struggling. I know it's Patrick Mahomes, but the wide receivers are bad, and I think this is going to be a low score, and I think Miami's going to win. I think it could be like a 17-14, 20-17 sort of game. And, yeah, I think Miami's going to pull off the upset.
I don't know if Mike McDaniels can survive out there with that cold weather. He's not going to be able to wear his joggers. He's not going to be able to wear his tight fit stuff. I don't know if Mike McDaniels will be able to get off the bus and be able to coach this Miami team. So definitely going to be a good matchup. I think it's going to be a good matchup. We'll see Taylor Swift about 45 times there at Arrowhead.
So I will not be watching that.
It's on Peacock, definitely. Why is it? Why? Whatever. I don't even care. So moving on from that, we got the Sunday slate then coming up. The Steelers and the Bills coming up there from Orchard Park in New York. That's going to be the first matchup of the day. Give me the Bills. I like what the Bills did in the second half of the season there. I'm going to take the Bills to win that one against the Steelers. I just don't think they have enough on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be quick with this one. Bills have been hot, so I think they're going to win. Plus, T.J. Watt's out for Pittsburgh, and Mason Rudolph is their quarterback. So I don't think you can really go against the Bills on this one. I'm going to go with the Bills.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Bills too, but I'm going to say I think it's going to be a close game. The Bills tend to overlook teams like this, so I think this could be a pretty close game, but I'll take the Bills.
Next up, we're going to pick it. We're going to pick it just because we can. We have the Packers taking on the Cowboys. I'm doing our pick'em. We're going to see who wins this week in our pick'em league for the playoff matchup. So I'm writing down all of our answers here. So we got to go Packers, Cowboys. We don't have to be biased here. We can give honest opinions here. But I'm going to tell you this. Packers have won the last 5 matchups against Dallas. Dallas can't win a big game. They have proven it. Dak Prescott sucks in big games. Give me the Packers on the road. And this is a far-fetched because I was against Jordan Love in the beginning of the season, but I think they're going to ride Aaron Jones, and I think they're going to win this one. A very low-scoring game against Dallas on the road. Give me the Packers. Give me the Packers. I got to do it.
Trage, I think if the Packers are going to win this game, it's going to have to be high-scoring, honestly, with you, because I don't think the Packers defense. No, I don't think the Packers defense is good enough to stop that Dallas offense here.
I don't think they can outsling Dallas. I don't think they can outscore Dallas. So if this is a shootout, I think Dallas mops them. I really do. The Packers will have to shut them down on the defensive side of the football to win this game.
With that being said, I would not be a Green Bay Packer fan if I didn't pick them. So I got to go Green Bay because I just can't go against the Packers. That's just unruly for my fandom.
Hey, guys, all I got to say is if the Cowboys score 20, we'll score 40. If they score 40, we'll score 80. I don't care. Packers by $1 billion. Let's go.
So we're going to double them for how many points they score, we're doubling it. All right.
Dude, I think they'll be like. I honestly think the Packers will be golden if they go past 30. And we got 80 coming out of Rogan's mouth over here for the Packers. So I mean, it's going to be a good matchup. I really do think it'll be a good matchup there for the Packers and Cowboys. The night game on Sunday, the Rams and the Lions. This is going to be a big matchup. Give me Matthew Stafford going back to Ford Field, pulling the upset off. I love what the Rams have done in the second half of the season. I love Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and Paku. They have been just unreal in this second half. So give me the Rams going to Ford Field.
I'm gonna take Detroit just because I gotta ride with Detroit. I mean, this is the first time they've been in the playoffs. I feel like they have a lot of pressure. First time in playoffs, and who knows when. And it's a home game there. They won a lot of stuff is riding on this game for Detroit, even for Campbell there as their coach. I feel like Detroit's going to do this for him, and I think Detroit's going to do this for the city of Detroit because they've been waiting for that playoff win in a long time. Give me Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Lions in this game. I really think they're going to dominate this game from start to finish. It might not be like by 2 or 3 scores, but I feel like they're going to control it. Detroit's kind of getting like disrespected, and I think that's perfect for Dan Campbell. And that, like, I don't like the Lions, but that stadium is going to be electric come Sunday. This is the first playoff game in, like Austin was saying, a long time. So, yeah, give me the Lions.
Can you imagine Detroit if they win a playoff game? It is going to be like they just won the Super Bowl. The streets will be littered with people until the next week, until they play again.
Stoplights will be on the ground, Trage.
Oh, man, it is good. Somebody is going to steal a field goal post out of Ford Field. Somehow they're going to get it out. It's going to be a mess over there. So moving into the Monday night game, I think this game is going to be better than what it should have been. Eagles, Buccaneers, coming from Tampa. This game is going to be good. The Eagles have been struggling as of late. Oh, that's a rough one. I'm going to ride with the Eagles in this one. I think the Eagles will figure it out in the playoffs. I think they'll win this first matchup.
Yeah, I think the same thing too. I mean, Philly's been struggling so much. I feel like they have to. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time. It seems like I feel like Philly's been losing so many games in a row. But I'm gonna say it again. I feel like they're gonna win this one. Tampa Bay, you look at them. They have some impressive wins, but overall, I mean, I feel like they haven't really played a team like Philly or like a lot. I mean, they beat Green Bay, but overall, they haven't played a lot of very good football against a lot of these teams in the playoff field, so some decent teams. I think Philly's going to bring a little extra edge there, considering that they lost a couple of those games, and they got a little chip on their shoulder there. So I think Philly's going to go into Tampa Bay and win.
Yeah, I think this is the toughest game to pick. Both these teams have not been playing great recently. I don't see the Eagles losing in the first round. Like, I just can't imagine that. They got too many good players, so I'm going to take the Eagles in a close one.
The only thing that worries me with the Eagles is how bad their secondary is. If the Buccaneers can pick them apart like they did with Green Bay, the Eagles will have to score a lot to keep up with Tampa Bay in that one. So it's going to be an interesting weekend there in the NFL schedule. I got all of our picks written down, so we'll see who wins. The differences will be in the Rams game, the Dolphins and Chiefs game, and the Texans and Cleveland. That's where our differences will rely in those matchups. So, I mean, Texans, Rams, they win, I win automatically. So that's what we're shooting for right there. But that's about all we got. Anybody else got anything to add here before we end today, leading into the weekend?
No, sir, Tridge.
Go, Pack, go.
Go, Pack, go. It's going to be a massive weekend in Wisconsin sports in general, NFL playoffs, Badger basketball in action on Saturday, and the Packers coming up there on Sunday there for that 3:30 start in Dallas. So big weekend coming up in Wisconsin. This has been Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you guys back here Monday, hopefully talking about a Packers win. But until then, deuces.
Yeah, oh my Lord, watch me sway, darkness falls and we all pray, hoping for the light of day, down to the river I have held